Peter V'landys, welcome to NRL 360. Massive decision made by the Australian Rugby League Commission today. How difficult was it to arrive at that point?
Look, it wasn't difficult because we always said that our paramount consideration is the health of our players. Any decision is based first and foremost on the health of the players. Today, that took a dramatic turn. The pandemic expert, who's also the biosecurity expert and world-renowned, said they could no longer guarantee the safety of the players. Their strong recommendation was to suspend the season. So we have always acted on the best expert advice. We said that from the start, that we wouldn't act on hysteria and opinions. We would act on the best available medical advice, and that's exactly what we've done.
So, Peter, if the recommendation was to suspend the season, does that mean the season's over? Does that mean there's no hope that there'll be any more games this year?
No, not at all. Look, we're looking at a lot of different options. It didn't help with the closure of the Queensland borders today, because we were looking at possibly up in Queensland and taking all the players up there. That took a dramatic turn. We also had to consider the Auckland Warriors. They've only got 1 day a window to go back to Auckland, and we had to make a very quick decision so as they could go back to their families. All options are still on the table. We're going to look at all different scenarios. Naturally, our prime objective now is to get the game back on as quickly as possible. That's why we've left the window open as to when that's going to be. And we will look at every possible option. But I must stress that the health of our players will be foremost in our minds with any decision. And unless we can have minimal risk or no risk to the health of our players, that option will be taken off the table.
Peter, we've been talking tonight about the survival of clubs, particularly the strugglers in Sydney. They are going to need to know urgently what sort of funding the NRL can come up with to keep them alive for when the competition resumes, be it 4 months, 6 months next year. When will they know how much money you guys have got to hand out?
Look, that's why I've called a meeting with all the clubs at 9 a.m. in the morning. We will have some frank discussions. We'll put everything on the table. This is a crisis. This is a financial crisis. There's no other way you can describe it. And some tough decisions have to be made, and we will make those in the coming days. It starts with that I will meet with all the clubs tomorrow at 9 a.m. We will put all the figures on the table. We'll look at all the different scenarios, but it's not going to be an easy road to navigate.
Peter, you used the word catastrophic a week ago when there was talk that the competition could be suspended. How realistic is it that when the competition begins again, at some point, clubs could go? Clubs may not survive this scenario.
Look, I've said that the analogy I'm using is that we're a family in rugby league. When the family needs each other, we'll be there for each other. We'll be there for every club. We will try our utmost that all 16 clubs survive this. And we're going to do everything in our power to do so. So I don't want to take any option off the table. I don't want to look at any way that a club may not survive. I'm just focused on making sure that we have a game when this is all over. And it is catastrophic. There's no other ways you can describe it. I don't think we've ever faced a financial crisis like this in the game. And, United will get through it, and we have to make some very, very tough and hard decisions.
Peter, there's been talk in the government about shutting down for 6 months. There's been talk that the game is not in a position to come back until July. My understanding is that the game doesn't have the funds to last until that time. So how do you safeguard the future of the game if the money's not in the bank account?
Look, as I said, it's a tough road to navigate, Paul. I'm not hiding that fact. We have got a problem. We've got a cash flow problem. We don't have as much resources as what we need, and we're just going to have to navigate through that. And I really can't tell you what's going to happen at the moment because there's so many different scenarios, and the rapid rate of infection is a concern not only for rugby league but for the whole community. So, this could change dramatically again tomorrow and next week, which makes our decisions now probably frivolous, and we have to look at a different scenario. As I said at the very first day of the media conference, this changes hourly, and it will continue to change hourly. The advice of that pandemic expert today was alarming. It changed overnight, and if they're right, this is going to get a lot worse before it gets better.
Peter, the 16 club agreements, their contracts are up at the end of next season. And we're suggesting here tonight that the salary cap will be nothing like it is now, of 9.75 million, that a restructured NRL won't be able to afford that. Do players know now they're going to have to take pay cuts?
Look, I think they're realistic. I think they're looking at the rest of the community and seeing that everyone's taking cuts, everyone's hemorrhaging at the moment. No one's immune to this, and all of us, we're all going to take cuts, and the players will be realistic. We want to minimise the cuts naturally to them, but there's no other option. If the game doesn't have revenue, it can't pay the same expenses, and the salary cap will be relooked at next year, because if we're to survive this, we're going to have to borrow funds, and we're going to have to look at borrowing considerable amounts, and then you have to repay those. So to repay those, you need to take it from future revenues, and so you can't have the same expense that you have now.
Peter, you keep referring to rugby league as a family, and I'm wondering, in light of the fact there are poor clubs and there are wealthy clubs, do you get the sense in your conversations that those with money are prepared to help those without it?
Look, I think so, and they're all united, the clubs. I've got to say that they are all looking after each other, and that's very promising moving forward, because we need all clubs to survive. This isn't from our own making. This is an Australian disaster, and we have to deal with it the best way we can. We can't be opportunistic. We can't let members of our family wither on the vine. We need to do everything in our power to keep them all there and keep them whole, and that's what we'll be focused on in the next few weeks.
So, Peter, I think the big thing that a lot of fans want to know at the moment is you've got all these options which the NRL, yourself and Todd have spoken about, that are available. So we've got things like playing, isolating everybody in Queensland, playing the competition up there, splitting the competition into conferences, delaying the season. Can you tell us, I know you haven't settled on anything, I know this has all got to be discussed, but in the preliminary discussions you've had, has there been, is something leading the way? Is there a preference there for the NRL, which way they want to go? Just so we've got some idea about what might be laying in the future for us.
Look, not really, because we don't know the variables. We don't know what's ahead of us in regards to this pandemic. If it's as bad as what the expert is telling us, we may have no options. And so we have to take expert advice and continue to take the advice as to what the best option is and what minimises the risk to the health of our players. And splitting it up in conferences is definitely one way, and keeping it in New South Wales, but then you have to bring the teams in from Melbourne and Queensland. It's too early to say, because I really don't know the variables. I really don't know when the borders are going to open up. We don't know, if there's going to be a complete lockdown. Is there going to be stage 2? As I said, listening to the expert today, it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better.
So given that there's nothing certain at the moment, when will you have some idea? When will you be able to say to us, after speaking to everybody, taking a look at the lay of the land, when will you be able to say to rugby league fans, this is what we are now considering, and we're hoping that we can make this work? Like, will it be weeks, months?
Hopefully it'll be in the next 2 weeks. We're going to be totally head down, tail up, looking at what the best option is. We want the game to survive. We want to get the game back for the fans and the players, and for all of us. And, it's an escape and a relief, and we want to get it back as quickly as we can. So in the next 2 weeks, we will look at every option, dot the I's, cross the T's, make sure that we can do it. But it'll all depend on the expert advice. It'll all depend that they tick that off as a viable option and as an option that doesn't affect the health of the players.
Peter, your critics have really come after you, particularly in the last 24 hours, for your decision to try and fight in the trenches and keep the NRL going for as long as possible. Why was it so important for you to take that stand?
Look, the viability of the game, first and foremost, and our expert advice had told us we could continue to play until now. As I said, everyone's got an opinion, and everyone, has different views. We can only rely on the expert advice of the chief medical officers and that of our pandemic expert. And as soon as that changed, our strategy changed, because we could no longer guarantee the safety of the players. As I said, the paramount consideration for us at all times was the health of the players. And up until today, we could guarantee the health of the players. But that took a dramatic turn, and we could no longer guarantee the health of the players. So we had to change strategy. So it had nothing to do with the pressure. It had nothing to do with what other people's views are. We've always taken a measured, calm approach. and we always said that we would listen to the experts, and that's exactly what we've done.
I think people working in multiple industries now are looking to their leaders to give them some guidance, but it's difficult because not many people have experienced situations like this. But you personally, as the boss of New South Wales Racing, had to deal with the equine influenza, and I'm wondering, were there lessons having to deal with that you've been able to apply to the current situation?
Look, it was the biosecurity measures that we undertook, the self-isolation to minimise the risk. We used all those strategies from equine influenza, but this is a lot more serious. This is affecting the whole of the community, not just one aspect of the community. And as I said, look, I'm very concerned for the community from the advice we received today. It's moving at a rapid rate. No one can give us answers. So we're got the unknown as much as anybody else. And look, the next 2 to 3 weeks is going to be crucial, not only for the future of rugby league, but for all of Australia.
Peter, are you concerned that the NRL next season won't look like it does now?
I don't think it'll look. We hope it looks like what it is now, but it's got to have a much reduced cost structure. There's no doubt about that. The cost structure has to change. If it doesn't change, it won't survive, and we won't be able to play unless the cost structure is reduced. So, to survive, we're going to have to borrow funds unless the government does provide us an economic stimulus. And if we do borrow monies, we have to pay them back. So naturally, we have to reduce our costs to be able to pay the money back.
Peter, difficult times, very complex and challenging, and we wish you all the best in the coming days and weeks, and appreciate your time tonight on NRL 360.
No, thank you. And there's no one more devastated than me today with the news that we received.
There he was, the chairman of the Australian Rugby League